A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to some more survival of No Limits. And I will go ahead and point out right away that today is a pretty big time for me to discuss scars of all sorts. As you might have already known, I've already talked about scars on my legs, on my arms, and who could ever forget that one time where I had a nasty burn. Probably one of the worst I might have ever had. But now it's time to go back onto my right arm, where unlike what happened here, this one in particular was a bit older. Mid-2016 was a pretty big time where I got paid to build furniture for some people. Especially a lot of people that I've known over the course of my entire life. As a result, I was basically the guy to go on ahead and assemble tons of different furniture while being paid to do so on most occasions. And there would be tons of times where we would actually buy our own furniture that would have to be assembled, and I would pretty much put it together for free typically. But there were a ton of occasions where I have helped people build certain furniture of all sorts. Bookshelves, dressers, bed frames, and lots more pretty much. Of course, the most recent case of me having to build furniture of my own type was the much more recent bed frame, which then accommodated a brand new bed mattress, bedding, which included sheet, blanket, and pillowcases, and plenty of other things pretty much. That was the most recent project that I had ever put together when it comes to furniture assembly, and that was almost a whole year ago now. But on one specialized occasion, at some point, while trying to get some stuff fixed up for what was then a ginormous desk with an array of 12 different drawers, very big drawers. And when you really think about it though, the past year or so has been a huge time for me to change between different sorts of scenery and all that good stuff. Because as you might have already known, I've documented it several times on Instagram, but there was a ton of home improvement that we had basically done to this same old bedroom, and there are tons of pictures out there right now that show the room looking a lot better than it used to be, because it had gotten a fresh coat of paint after several years of us not doing so. But I will go ahead and say that years before all of that even happened, there was a time where I basically had to put out a few modifications on the desk itself. The giant one, of course, not the one that I have right now, which is much smaller and a bit more easy to handle typically. Because right here we got ourselves a scar that's pretty small, but I don't know if you might be able to see it right here pretty much. This was actually the result of me trying to get screwed together. It was a flathead screw, so I had to use a flathead driver to drive it in pretty much. I was basically tightening it up though. The screwdriver got pretty tense, and there were times where it would fall off pretty easily. Maybe because the bit that I was using at the time wasn't really the correct one, but I still had to persevere because it was almost at a point where it was tight enough that we could finally get moving on to the rest of the entire project, because I had been struggling with it for quite some time. But unfortunately, upon attempting to tighten up the screw probably more than it should, just to ensure that it stays together at all times and holds itself under its own weight, the flathead screw did get tight enough. But upon me getting that last turn in together, the pressure was gigantic. I mean, I was pulling with all my might. But then, boom! The driver pretty much falls right out of the screw again, and my right arm was pretty much resting right down there. And then, well, after it pretty much fell right off, it then went, it just slit right down here, leaving me bleeding and wanting to find out why does this stuff happen every now and then. Of course, it's a normal thing to obtain scar tissue. Over the course of your entire life, there could be things where you're doing a lot more risky stuff and all that good stuff, but I feel like the main point that I'm actually putting together here is just the fact that home improvement is one of those things where they are indeed pretty dangerous. Lots of projects of all sorts have their danger factor put into them, Whether you're climbing up high slopes or ladders, or you're operating certain power tools that could mean serious injury or death if you're not careful, whether you have the right kind of protective gear on or otherwise, there's lots of different ways that I have talked about in another episode of Survival of No Limits a while ago about how home improvement entirely can be a pretty dangerous thing if you don't know what you're doing at all. But I will go ahead and say, this one home improvement project, I was getting the desk back in shape correctly so it would be able to hold the weight of a lot of pounds within those 12 drawers. At the same time though, I feel like that desk was still a complete pile of junk. Even though I had only had it for 8 long years, at the same time there was also a point where we had ourselves a nice big paint coating at the time. But here in July 2021 was the time when we went on ahead and did ourselves another big home improvement project. And I tell you, after 8 long years, it really turned out to be way better than I would have anticipated. It's also important to note that, well, it probably won't even be happening ever again, at least not for a long time. Especially considering the fact that, well, think about it. I've spent over $100 just on the paint alone. And I managed to do even bigger when it comes to a lot of the other things out there. Getting plastic wrap together, having the kind of brushes ready, and all the other kind of equipment that would be necessary for these kind of projects certainly was quite a big affair, but in the end I was able to accomplish it within about a month. But it's still important to note that one project alone, July 2016, pretty much left this big scar, in contrast to the huge project that we had to do in that one entire room. But still, it probably could have been worse. It could have been a time where the screwdriver probably would have stabbed into my heart and possibly killed me from heart attack or otherwise. Or who even knows what else could have potentially happened. But anyways, that's probably it for today. But if you want to see more, go down on my channel along with one last scar story that I will be talking about in a couple more days. Then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.